The last time we saw a true Apex Solos event was with the Iron Crown event on August 13th, all the way back in 2019. And for the next 4 years, the Apex developers have clearly been petrified of actually incorporating some form of solo play element into any new game modes. And even in the style of LTMs, where you normally would be playing as a solo instead of in a full team, they've still chosen to go for the latter, to the point where, in my opinion, some of these LTMs missed out on some amazing potential. The first one that comes to mind is one that I've been very vocal about in the past. It's something I brought up in several videos of mine by now, and even made one video specifically talking about how much of a swing and a miss this game mode was, and that is Gun Run. For those who might not know, Gun Run is a gun game mode that is currently part of the mixtape where you, 2 teammates, and a total of 4 different teams farm kills in a very small map. Every time you get a kill, you end up leveling up your weapon, all the way to tier 25, where you get a throwing knife, and if you end up getting a kill with that throwing knife, you win the game. And when we look at how it works, thankfully it doesn't instantly level you up if a teammate gets a kill, which is good. You still need to get a kill with a weapon you may be uncomfortable with, but having a shared progression system means that you can play an entire gun run game and only get maybe a handful of kills out of the potential 25, and then maybe even finish off the game winning with only 1 throwing knife kill. The next issue with gun game is the larger one and probably ties into the shared progression as well. The problem is that we're in a team, in a gun game style game mode. For those who may not know, and as far as I know, gun game traditionally is a solo type free-for-all style of game mode with a lot of fun, chaos, and crazy moments. There have been team deathmatch based gun game modes in the past, but I would argue that the most popular ones definitely were the free-for-all ones. But even when the modes featured a team deathmatch style server, the progression was still individual, and the winner wasn't a team, but one specific player who leveled up and got kills with all of those weapons. So other than the whole progression thing, which turns Gun Run from something bad into something nearly unplayable when compared to the predecessors, I feel like having full teams, especially many full teams in the same server going at it, just makes it feel super weird. And I don't think that Respawn needed to try and reinvent the wheel here. And after they had hosted a fan vote on which game mode they should feature with the release of Season 17, Control won by a long shot, with Gun Run left in the dirt, which is just such a shame for a game mode that had so much potential. Another game mode that would have been really cool to see, and keep in mind I don't think this was an LTM that Respawn ever planned to release, would be Deathmatch, as in free-for-all Deathmatch. Do the same maps and the same system as the fairly popular Team Deathmatch mode, but instead of pinning 2 teams against each other, we could have just 8 or 16 players duking it out with random respawns. I guarantee it will be a lot more popular than most of the LTMs that we've seen so far, and probably a fraction of the effort to make. And the thing is, the Apex community yearns for some type of Solos event. Most specifically ask for the return of the Iron Crown Solos event, which was a battle royale with 60 players in their own individual teams. But like I mentioned previously, I think that the game would benefit a lot from any type of solo game mode. And there are plenty of modes where you can simply turn the game mode into a solos version of it and have a completely different, in some cases even an improved experience. So what happened with the August 13 Solos event? What was so wrong that Respawn went completely scorched earth on any form of solo modes, to the point that they, to this day, 4 years later, still haven't brought it back one single time? Thankfully, Respawn eventually shared their own thoughts on the situation, with their official stance appearing in the Old Ways event's patch notes, and this gives us some insight into why we only saw a solo-style game mode once, and then never have again. In Respawn's own words, the introduction of solos actually negatively impacted the game, in particular when it came to new player retention, as in how many players stick around when they're new to the game. They also added that the legends in the game purposefully were designed to complement team play and the squad composition, and the addition of solos made those legends more or less useless. My first thought upon hearing this, my first thought of a legend who would struggle could be Lifeline, who has most of her power from reviving teammates that are already downed. So what do you do if you don't have teammates to begin with? Respawn also added that they were looking for ways to allow a solo experience, but keep in mind this was almost 3 to 4 years ago, and the closest that we have today is a duo queue and the option to no-fill, but that's about it. And I mean, as far as answers go, it's a pretty good one, and I doubt that they're lying or anything like that. But I definitely feel like we might be missing a larger part of the picture. There are probably a lot of things that they are leaving unsaid. You know, legend balance is certainly important, and yeah, some legends might be bad in a solo-style game mode compared to other team-based game modes, but I don't think that matters too much. Since there are plenty of hero games where you have seen solo games and the communities just accept that, yeah, some legends are bad in solos and some are better. That's it. So if you guys allow me to go on a bit of a tangent here and speculate a little bit and put that tinfoil hat on, let me throw out a few ideas to expand on their reasoning. So, starting off, it's no secret that the matchmaking isn't really, you know, the best. And if we look back into 2019 when solos actually were a thing, and throughout 2020 when it started becoming a requested feature again, it was a lot worse than the updated version we have of it today. The matchmaking notoriously placed low-level players with high-level players, where the high-level players were expected to carry the lower-level ones, so they in turn would also have some fun, with something that we called Big Brother matchmaking. And full disclosure, Respawn did disprove that they intentionally have something called Big Brother matchmaking, but they explained that the matchmaking more or less does work like that, which, believe it or not, is a very large part as to why solos would impact the new player retention. Because, let me elaborate, new players will eventually get into real matches with real, good players, and they're going to find themselves out of their depth. When this inevitably happens, if they are solo queuing, there will be high-level players also solo queuing who will find themselves on the same team, now with the job to carry those noobs to ensure that they have a good time and to keep them playing the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure a lot of bad players don't even consider themselves getting carried in their day-to-day matches, but the designated carries can definitely tell. So what if you're not playing in a team mode? What if you're playing in a solo game mode? All of a sudden, the new players don't have anyone to carry them. They jump in game, get absolutely blasted without a designated carry, and then they leave the game out of frustration, which in turn shows as negative game retention for those new players. I think them being new players is an important distinction as well, because experienced and, well, you know, better players are probably having a blast in a solos queue where they are being untethered from having 2 sandbags that they are supposed to carry. And most of these really good players are also conveniently the ones begging for solos to come back. But these silly players don't understand that their job isn't to have a good time. It's to babysit little Timmy until he decides to use his mom's credit card on the battle pass. And that's the solo queue angle. The way to look at it, and keep in mind this is probably a huge reach with a lot of conjecture, but it makes sense, so bear with me. It's no secret that being in a pre-made stack is a massive advantage to actually solo queuing, because you can select your own teammates and avoid needing to carry 2 absolute morons. I mean, Respawn sort of admitted as much when they explained how SBMM works with their matchmaking update a few months ago. And you could argue that stacking being an advantage is by design, even though it might be a bit weird. I mean, you even get additional experience if you're in a pre-made squad. So not only do you get easier games for being pre-made, but the game rewards you with progression points as well. Think about it. If stacking is such a huge advantage, everyone will want to be in a pre-made stack, right? So what happens if you're an Apex player and want people to stack with for that advantage, but don't actually have access to teammates to play with? You might start asking your real-life friends to install Apex and start playing the game with you. It's an incredibly strong recruitment tool, and Respawn would want to make sure to keep those players hooked for long enough, to the point where they start playing on their own, and maybe bring in their own friends as well. I mean, it's worked for this long, right? But if there's a solos-only queue, not only do you not have the incentive to bring in those other players to start playing with you, you can't bring them in with you in the first place, and these stacks of players are split into individual performances. If this happens, the new players that were onboarded by their experienced friend are thrown to the wolves, and they might just get absolutely blasted, uninstall the game, and never come back again. And if we look at Apex's design decisions through that lens, things start making a little bit more sense. Why introduce the risk of losing a player because they themselves are bad, when you can coddle them, give them every advantage in the book, and just keep them on the hook so they will keep bringing more and more players in? From a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Of course, thank you guys for listening to my thoughts on this. I'm curious to hear what you all think in the comments. As usual, hit the like, subscribe, and if you are interested in more of Apex's large problems with their design philosophy, check out the video on the screen. It's a banger. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.